The following program is the work of the broadcast students at the British Columbia Institute of Technology. BCIT Magazine features news stories from around the Lower Mainland which were produced over the last week. Responsibility for the content of the show rests completely with the students and their instructors.
Coming up on BCIT Magazine, a river otter invades Sun-Yat-Sen gardens.
A Tri-Cities man promotes a new definition of manhood.
And SFU students protest against a proposed tuition hike.
Welcome to BCIT Magazine. I'm Ashley Mollica.
And I'm Ben Ronald. An otter is invading a popular tourist attraction and eating the koi fish. Jason Manawis visited the Dr. Sun-Yat-Sen garden to find out why.
An unusual sight as Dr. Sun-Yat-Sen Park is closed for the day. What was more unusual was the 12 koi fish that normally would stick out were nowhere to be found, because now the pond is a target for a river otter who's eating his aquatic neighbors. Deanna Chan is used to seeing heron and other animals snatch the baby koi, which what makes the otter's larger meal choice strange.
This is the first time that we've had sort of a larger predator that is actually going after the large koi, which are pretty big.
Chan normally spends lunch outside admiring the koi fish. Most people see them as just fish. Chan sees them as much more.
We kind of think of the koi as part of our team at the garden. We love them, visitors really love seeing them, and they're just an integral part of this garden.
Traps have now been set for the otter as the search continues. The otter has been seen in the park, garden, and even parts of Chinatown.
So behind us we have our Jade Water Pavilion. This is how the koi can go between the garden side and the park side. This is also a place where the otter likes to bring its kills. There's some rock just below the pavilion, and so it likes to eat there where it's not disturbed.
Now, according to park staff, the otter is still around in the area. However, a glimmer of hope for these remaining koi fish is that the otter is leaving an obvious trail behind. I'm Jason Manawis in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
6 students from St. Michael's College in Toronto were arrested this week after a video emerged of an alleged sexual assault in a locker room. The incident is raising questions about behavior that at times can seem all too common among young men. My co-anchor Ben Ronald went to Coquitlam to see how one group is educating young men on how to buck this trend.
On a rainy morning in Coquitlam, one man is going to work to combat what he calls toxic masculinity. Hayden Averill coordinates a program for high school and college men. The program looks at what's wrong with traditional notions of being a man.
Being sexually dominant, aggressive, violent, stoic, and basically having a lot of power. And if a man doesn't internalize those aspects, then it's basically he's not a real man.
Hayden works within the Children of the Street Society. Their mission is to combat child sexual exploitation, focusing on those who are responsible for much of the exploitation.
90% of the time are young males. So the redefining manhood is to start talking about healthy relationships and what is consent and how we set our minds on relationships.
Averill admits tackling heavy topics like sexual assault can be draining, but what he sees from the kids he talks to gives him hope for the future.
These gender roles don't make sense anymore. They're really silly. They're not how they identify, which sometimes just blows my mind because I look back to when I was their age and it was just like not a question. We didn't even talk about this stuff. And just their willingness to have these conversations is just really incredible.
Averill wants to expand the program to even younger children and older adults, because as he says, everyone could benefit from this kind of awareness. Ben Ronald in Coquitlam for BCIT Magazine. There's a new campaign at Simon Fraser University to battle tuition increases. Our reporter Daria Zargar spoke with students about this hike and how it affects them.
SFU students are rallying against a tuition proposal for the 2019 to 2020 school year. A proposal that could see an increase of up to 20% for international students.
We definitely think that SFU does not need to increase tuition, especially SFU actually has surpluses for the recent years, and SFU also has a pretty large endowment. There is no need for an tuition increase, even though they're saying that there's going to be deficit and things like that. But we think they definitely can find a way around that.
SFU Tuition Freeze Now was created immediately after VP Finance Minister Martin Patrico emailed last month. The email says that the increases are necessary to avoid a deficit of $15 million. The proposal for the following school year ranges from smallest to domestic undergraduates as a 2% increase, incoming international undergraduate students with 12%, and the highest being BD School of Business courses with 20%.
I feel like a lot of the population at SFU for sure, other universities are international students, which is not fair, and they have to settle down here too, and a lot of them have to get housing, which is very pricey.
There's a perception that they come from money overseas, and so they can necessarily afford to shoulder this burden, when again, research shows that's simply incorrect.
I'm planning for my next semester about whole, planning and what should I do for example, my rent and all other expenses. And I didn't know that.
Protest organizers have created a website where students can click and sign a petition. The campaign's goal is to freeze tuition for 2 years. Daria Zargar in Burnaby for BCIT Magazine.
Joining us live now to talk a bit more about the tuition hike is our reporter Daria Zargar. So Daria, what does the tuition increase mean for students?
Well, Ben, it depends what kind of student you are. So if you're international or domestic, from what the emails were saying and what SFU Tuition Freeze Now was also saying is that international students face the highest amount of percentages. So with the highest being 20% in BD School of Business courses.
And what did SFU have to say when you reached out to them about it?
So in the email, it explained even with the tuition increase, there will still be a $3.5 million shortfall for the next year. So they're trying to fix this by reviewing expenses.
Coming up after the break, a local food bank gears up for the holiday season.
And the trans community pays tribute to those who have died worldwide.
Back order control.
Zoom out just a tiny bit.
Sorry, say that again?
Could you zoom out a tiny bit?
It's a quick 2 years. They get you in and they get you out, but you leave with so much more knowledge when you walk in.
The BC Hockey League hosted the 3rd annual BCHL Showcase last week.
Joining us live in studio is Keith Poor, campaign organizer for Fair Vote Canada BC. He will be giving us some insight into proportional representation. Keith, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Keith, give us your pitch. Why should BCers adopt proportional representation?
I think it's a better way of running a representative democracy. If only half of our votes count to electing someone, as it does right now, we don't see engagement in our political process. Under a proportional representation system, more of our votes count to electing an MLA.
And I'm going to get you to play devil's advocate against yourself a bit here. What would the detractors of a proportional representation system say?
Well, sometimes legislation can be a little bit slow to move forward, but that just means that there's more collaboration between parties to come up with policies that work for everyone or most of citizens instead of just party representatives.
So Elections BC gives us updates pretty much weekly about how many completed voting packages they've received. Based on where we're at in the campaign and how many they've received, are we about where you thought we would be?
Yeah, I think we're pretty good as for turnout at the moment. 27% of voters have submitted their ballot, and that's at an Election BC depot, not just what's in Canada Post's process.
The Pro First Past the Post camp, they suggest that a proportional representation system allows fringe and extremist parties to grab hold of power in government. From what you've seen, does that play out in reality in the world?
No, not usually. What happens right now is extreme or fringe ideas come through big tent parties and can become leaders. Under a proportional voting system, there might be one or two people elected, but most of the time parties won't even work with those fringe elements to produce policies.
Some recent polling by Main Street Research shows that the vote pretty much split down the middle in terms of how people intend to vote. What do you think that says about the referendum?
It says that people are not going to the ballots yet, or people might be confused about the options, so they can go to referendumguide.ca to learn more about what they value in a voting system.
And then last question, what will you do, what will your group do if the vote's unsuccessful and if it is successful?
Either way, we're going to be pushing for proportional representation federally because we have an election coming up next year.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
The holiday season is fast approaching, and it can be a stressful time of year for many families. My co-anchor Ashley Mollica visited a Port Moody food bank to find out what is needed the most.
It's delivery day at the Share Society Food Bank. Volunteers sort fresh produce for food hampers destined for families in need. Over 300 hampers are delivered to families weekly, with this number slightly increasing around the Christmas season. Last year, over 1,000 holiday hampers were distributed.
We add a little bit more to the hampers, again, so that people have more to provide on Christmas Day for their family.
Volunteers say there's one more thing that's needed this time of year.
We need more people, and like I said, it's going to get worse. It's not getting any better. So.
Mel Roach has been a volunteer for over a decade and has noticed a change in clientele.
I've seen a lot of these people I know that are coming here for hampers and that. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe how some of these people have lost their jobs and that, and old age pensioners especially. It's really bad.
It's not just pensioners. The Tri-Cities have seen an increase in working families, which the food bank hopes to help this Christmas season. Ashley Mollica in Port Moody for BCIT Magazine. Each year, hundreds of trans and gender non-conforming people are murdered worldwide. Our reporter Aaron Gillen found out more about the day that honors the lives lost by speaking with a trans ally.
Realize that putting this makeup on takes about an hour.
Diversity Reigns always figured he was a friend of the transgender community, but it wasn't until he went to a New West Pride event that he knew he was destined to play a bigger part.
On my 70th birthday, I gave myself a gift. I called up and said, I want to join the sisters.
The sisters he's referring to aren't Catholic nuns, but actually the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, a non-profit charity that raises money for LGBTQ causes. Today, he's getting ready for the Trans Day of Remembrance March.
So I basically got what I want done there.
Diversity's makeup is his way of rebelling against gender roles and religion. The sisters have received criticism for their parodies of Catholic icons, but Diversity says it frees him.
My personal mission is to encourage everyone to be who they are and live it and love it.
While Diversity has never felt in danger to be who he is, hundreds around the world have. According to Trans Murder Monitoring, the numbers have increased each year. Back in 2016, it was 295. Now in 2018, it's at 369, the highest in history so far. On a Tuesday night in the downtown East Side, hundreds marched in recognition of trans lives lost around the world, including Diversity.
For everyone who's died, hopefully there's somebody who's managed to come out the other side.
I'm standing outside the Siegel Center in SFU's downtown campus. The protesters have gathered here after the march for a candlelight vigil. They'll remember those lives who were lost by reading their names, their age, and how they died, one name at a time.
We have a false sense of security, which is similar to what happens with pride and other sort of gay issues in the previous decades. You know, we need to stand up and show solidarity with the erasure of trans people in America, the rising of fascism in Brazil.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay, fascist, bigots, go away.
Marches like these remind Diversity of the sacrifices of those before him so he can be who he is today. Aaron Gillen in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay, fascist.
We are now joined live by our reporter Aaron Gillen. Aaron, we don't hear a lot about trans people being killed here in Canada. What country has the highest rate of murders?
Well, Ashley, 167 people were reportedly murdered in Brazil alone. Now, to put that into perspective, that's 45% of this past year's list. Now, some other countries with significant numbers are Mexico, the United States, and Colombia.
And Aaron, what's the life expectancy of a trans person?
Well, Ashley, according to a 2014 report, the average life expectancy of a trans person is between 30 and 35. And surprisingly, trans women of color have the lowest life expectancy, only at 31. Now, if you've passed this age, it's considered that you've lived very beyond your years.
Coming up, a representative from the Movember Foundation swam Burrard Inlet for a good cause.
And NCAA teams made the trip up north to give Canada a taste of U.S. college basketball.
We're here live in studio on For the Record.
Before I went to BCIT, I had a little bit of experience in college radio, which I loved. I walked into a newsroom, I sat down with the news director, and after 3 minutes he said, "Young man, I would never put you on television. Go to BCIT, get some experience, then come talk." Simply knowing how, where to go, who to talk to, who the players are, that allows you to get out in the field. It keeps you humble, it keeps you hungry, and it keeps you guessing and asking those better questions.
Mark the calendar, sports fans. We got some huge matchups for you. Try to keep up. Parkour!
If you like hockey, but have had it up to here with the NHL, head over to UBC to watch the Thunderbirds take on the Lethbridge Pronghorns Friday, November 30th at 7 p.m.
Want to check out some high-grade volleyball? Make sure to check out the Boys Provincial High School Championship happening November 28th through December 1st at the Langley Event Center. Parkour!
For the basketball fans out there, the U.S. College Women's Tournament is coming to town from November 22nd till the 24th at the Vancouver Convention Center downtown.
That was your community calendar.
Have a good weekend.
The head of the Movember Foundation swam 8 kilometers in the frigid waters of Burrard Inlet for a good cause on the weekend. Our reporter Matt Lawson has more on the story.
Mitch Hermansen of the Movember Foundation is preparing to do something most people would avoid at this time of year. Swim in the Burrard Inlet. Hermansen says he's ready to brave the cold for a good cause.
So right now we're at Jericho Beach, and we're going to head out from here and do a big loop over to Kitts and then come back to Jericho. So it should be in and around 8 kilometers.
For safety reasons, a volunteer on a kayak paddled next to Hermansen during the swim. Friends and family, some with mustaches and some without, came out to support Hermansen, who's aiming to raise $6,000 for men's health with the swim. With over 2 hours to kill, all anyone can do is watch and wait anxiously. At the halfway point of the swim, Hermansen had been swimming in 9-degree water for over an hour.
But when you get out of the water, what happens is the blood starts to rush back to these areas that have been deficient of cold blood, and it will take the warm blood away from your core, creating something that's called afterdrop, and you can get quite sick and nauseous and hypothermic.
His welcoming party cheered him on as he came ashore. It took Hermansen just over 2.5 hours to complete the swim. Now it's time to get warm.
You're pretty much.
Yeah, feeling pretty accomplished. You know, asked me 3 months ago if I was going to do that, I would have told you no way, but here we are. It's done, so feeling pretty good.
As the sun went down over Jericho Beach, Hermansen headed for a fireplace and a nice warm beverage. Matt Lawson in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
Vancouver hosted the inaugural TCL Vancouver Showcase, the first ever NCAA basketball tournament outside of the U.S. The Night of Hoops would feature one University of Washington player stealing the spotlight. Jason Manauez has the story.
The first ever NCAA tournament outside of the U.S. tipped off this weekend in Vancouver and featured some premier Division I NCAA teams. Its first game saw the Washington University Huskies taking on the Santa Clara Broncos. On this special occasion for Vancouver basketball fans, it was clear from the opening tip-off that the night would belong to Washington's number 5. Sophomore guard Jalen Noel out of Seattle exploded for a season-high 32 points. Whether it was his intensity on defense, speed getting into the lane, or hitting his patented jump shot, Noel's energy resonated with the entire team.
I don't really focus on points per se, so I'm just going out there playing for the guys, and the ball just happened to come to me a lot.
It was Noel's aggressive play that saw Washington pressing the Broncos early.
Special player, efficient, gets in the lane, hard to guard. Just like he's on our team.
Coach Hopkins emphasized defense to his team that let Santa Clara only score 68 points. The packed Vancouver Convention Center echoed with the roar of basketball fans from all over the city as dance performers, old mascots, and even NBA legends made an appearance.
I love the way they yell during the games and things like that. They do a lot of things you don't normally see in the U.S. So I mean, it's great playing here.
Washington won the game 82-68 and wrapped up the tournament against Minnesota and Texas A&M. Jason Manauez in Vancouver for BCIT Magazine.
Cerebral palsy affects a person's ability to move and maintain balance, but it won't stop an 8-year-old from living his life to the fullest. Our reporter Aaron Gillen has more on the kid that won't allow trips and slips to keep him down.
You're never going to catch me now.
Keegan Sway is just like any other kid in his jiu-jitsu class, except Keegan has cerebral palsy. Today he's wearing black.
It's harder because I fall more and I walk quite different.
He was diagnosed at 3 years old, and now at 8, he uses only one word to describe how it feels to live with the disorder.
Unique.
And that's exactly how he lives his life.
Excuse me?
Keegan has been a part of jiu-jitsu for over a year now. His parents teach jiu-jitsu to all ages at the gym, including a kids class, which he's a part of.
It keeps me on the go. He's like a little, he's not a kid, he's like a little man, right? Like, you know, you can have a full conversation with him.
And he's really positive. He doesn't let things get him down. When he falls, he just gets right back up. And really bright and witty, and he keeps us on our toes.
Though Keegan does his best to keep up with the others, his stiff muscles and imperfect coordination worry his parents.
The way he walks now, like, you know, if he runs, he'll trip on his feet and he'll fall, and he'll, like, you know, every like once or twice a week, he's got cuts on his knees or something, right? And as he gets older and he gets bigger, and what my main concern would be is, like, he gets taller, he's gonna fall from a higher level, right? Eventually he might just break something, you know? It's tough to see as a dad, right? So, yeah, it could be big.
Hi, Colin.
To help Keegan's future mobility, his parents are planning a life-altering surgery next July in the United States. The surgery will have his muscles lengthened and improve his walking. The jiu-jitsu community in Burnaby came together and fundraised $8,000 for the sways, bringing them to a total of $17,000. But the surgery cost $30,000. Until July, the sways will be selling t-shirts and chocolates to meet their goal. They've also opened a GoFundMe page to the public. Meanwhile, Keegan will keep a smile on his face and determination in his heart. And as far as it goes for jiu-jitsu classes,
He's much more cooperative when it's fun.
I always know that.
Yeah.
Aaron Gillen in Burnaby for BCIT Magazine.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced emergency legislation this morning to force Canada Post employees back to work, while both sides are still trying to reach a deal. Trudeau says the pressure is building, especially with the upcoming holiday season, as well as current Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. Canada Post has already told its commercial customers it cannot honor its delivery standards because of the ongoing strikes. If you have any questions regarding the show, you can contact us at bcit-broadcast.com or bcitnews.com.
That was your BCIT Magazine for this week. I'm Ashley Mollier.
And I'm Ben Ronald, and we leave you with a view of Burrard Inlet.